It's spring week 3 here in Apothecaria, and Bob, from Bits and Bobs, has been cursed by a bog goblin with Cludgie mouth. Hey there, welcome to Drawing Expressions. I'm Parz. If you've been following along in these series of videos that I have been doing, or this series of videos, you've been following along with this Apothecaria-inspired creative writing, episodic creative writing project that I've been doing and sharing with you, this playthrough. Yeah, so we're into it pretty deep now. This is week 3. So this is our sixth episode, right? Because we've had the prologue and then 2 videos for week 1, 2 videos for week 2. So there we go. It's a number 6. So it's starting to get to the point where if you're listening for the story and this is the first time that you're coming in, you may want to click the button right there, and I'm going to make sure that it shows up there, which will start you at the beginning of the series, so you can follow along. And the videos are now getting the little chapter titles down along the edge of the screen, so you can find your way to the narration if that's all you're looking for. And if you're looking for where I'm talking about how I put the story together, come on in. If it makes sense to you to be jumping into the middle, great. Otherwise, follow along that way from the start, and hey, you know, this will be here waiting for you. Okay. That said, let us just go straight into the guidelines. Guidelines are sort of like saying, you sure you want to jump in the middle? You sure you don't want to start at the beginning? The guideline says it'd be a good idea to start at the beginning, but hey, you know, everyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome here. That is not a guideline, that's a rule. And I know, okay, it's a really, really firm guideline. Haven't had enough of this yet, so I haven't quite gotten that whole, guideline thing down. Releases, the rules-based. Okay. So yeah, guidelines. And we do have the 2 sections, as always, the planner and the pantser. So the planner, much like the videos as they have been the last couple and will be going forward. So the planner is all about the story and how I put it together. And so the things that came together to make it, and then I narrate the story as well. And then the pantser. Today it's going to be working with the concept of when does your writing session end. And this is going to be of particular import for people who are writing during times when they're tired, fatigued, ill, chronically ill, which is, so you got that all the time because it's chronic. So we'll be talking about that. Okay. But before we get there, let's do our breathe and stretch, get our minds and bodies ready. I'm going to invite you to take a nice deep breath in with me. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Deep breath in. And a little stretch. Just a little. I like that. This is one of the best parts of the video, making the video for me, is just, taking that opportunity to breathe and stretch. Okay. So, yeah, so week 3, and this is a potion making week. Let me bring up the prompts that we have. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. So go ahead, grab a screenshot, and then we will be discussing that. So just right there. Perfect. And I will bring us back. Awesome. Okay, so let's discuss some items that are in that list. So the first thing, we have Cludgie mouth. Now, the one thing that I did not check, let me just see here real quick. Okay, yeah, timer is 6 actions. And if you've been following, you know what that means. Okay, so Cludgie mouth. Cludgie is not a word that I typically know or use. And so thank you to the internet for helping me find out what it means. So when we're looking at terms inside of Apothecaria, really anything that is published by Black Ball Games, which is the publisher of this and the author, Anna Blackwell. So she's based in the UK. So there's going to be UK-based language. There's going to be UK-based culture and references and things like that. So just be aware. Cludgie is one of these. It's a Scottish slang term that means a toilet and or a washroom. So, you know, a pleasant smell. Not. Yeah, when I saw the detailed write-up that she had put into the book, and I decided that it was going to smell sort of like an open sewer type of thing, and it's coming from the mouth. Yay. So yes, Cludgie mouth, or perhaps in Scotland, Cludgie mouth, or bad Scottish accent. Bad Parz. Don't do accents that you can't do. So, as I said in the prior video, Alicia and I, we draw cards every Monday, pretty much, you know, barring health and or exhaustion issues. And we draw them together and sort of plot out what it is that we're looking to do during that particular episode. This time, what happened is there's 2 tags associated with Cludgie mouth. One is curse, and the other is, I believe it's infection. It'll come up. And so as we were plotting through and what we were searching for, we decided, okay, we're going to go get an infection curing reagent, and then of course we're going to go get the curse one. I lost track, and I got us a second infection by mistake. And it was only as we were kind of going through and doing our draws and whatnot, and I was keeping track of things, like, ooh, whoops. So what do you do in a situation where you have gone, ooh, oops? You could edit it and say, this didn't happen. I'm backsies. I'm doing some backsies. What just happened didn't really happen. It was practice. What Alicia and I opted to do instead is to say, this is just how it's gonna go. There was an oopsie doodle, and we're writing in the oopsie doodle. So there is actually quite the write-up in the episode with this oopsie doodle in there, and I'm glad that we decided to not edit and to not leave this out, because it really adds some tension. So, and actually the thing that we were looking for that was on accident, it took us 3 actions to get on something that we only have 6 actions on. So we really burned through a lot of actions on what was essentially just, it was a mistake. So while we're in Heroes Hollow, we encounter something that is called the Mimic. And the Mimic is, it is a non-player character. It sort of kind of looks like a chest with a whole bunch of legs on the bottom. think that's how the description goes. Basically, it can look anything like it wants to. It prefers legs, and it can be anything the size of a bed or smaller. And now, the way that the mechanic works in Apothecaria is you feed it an animal reagent, assuming that you have one on hand. If you encounter this mimic repeatedly, 3 times, and you feed, so every time you encounter and you feed it, so once you've gotten that 3rd feed in, it will follow you and become a limited use familiar. All right, and there's details within the guidebook about what it can do. Okay, so the mimic is very reminiscent of Terry Pratchett's luggage in the Discworld series. And so in that luggage, first off, it's mentioned multiple times across the books. So the character develops, but one of some of the features of the luggage, and we borrow heavily, both Alicia and I, for our stories, is that it's basically like a chest with 100 little legs, and you can put pretty much anything into it. Yeah, and it can get quite aggressive if someone is attacking its owner. So with the feeding of the animal reagent to the mimic, because again, the mimic is the title or the name of it for Apothecaria. If you have if you have animal reagent on you, you can feed it to the mimic. But what if you didn't know that you really needed it? So you've encountered the mimic, but you don't have anything to feed it. Wouldn't it be nice to have some way of just having that reagent on you rather than back at your witch's cottage to be able to feed? And so I wanted to add something that would allow me to be able to feed. Alicia and I are going prompt light, so we don't get a lot of prompts, and so the opportunities for seeing the mimic inside Heroes Hollow is quite low. So we don't want to miss an opportunity to feed something if we have that opportunity. So how do we get around that? How do you make sure that you've got a reagent in your pocket to be able to feed the mimic? And I wrote that in as well. Okay, so one item to talk about to mention real briefly, is the witch. So every so often, we are going to come across a hint or a prompt about the old witch. And there's actually 4 levels of hints that exist. And so we're sort of working our way through the first level. Occasionally we'll hit, something a little bit deeper. The overarching story of Apothecaria, the way the game is designed, is to talk about the old witch. Where is she? Where did she go? Is she coming back? Did she leave willingly? Did she, was something nefarious happen? All these kinds of these things. So you get these little hints about the disposition of the witch, right? So we've heard from like a relative, and we've heard about her manner with patients, and this time we heard that she had a hobby, non-magical hobby. And so these are the types of things to kind of keep in mind. Now, the way that Alicia and I are writing our stories, the focus on the old witch is decreasing more and more, because we're really focused on what's happening to our witches and our familiars and the patients in town and whatnot in the here and now, and really aren't looking to investigate the old witch. It's interesting that it comes in from time to time. It helps to give it a flavor to the story, but we're really not concerned about the old witch, where she is, what happened to her. It may happen someday that we actually get a final answer to where the old witch is, or where her remains are, if she has passed away. Don't really know, right? But someday we may resolve this, but we're in no rush. in no rush at all to figure it out. Much more interested in the day-to-day happenings of our witches and familiars, and yeah, our patients, and just all the goings on. Okay, so one more thing to mention is the ingredients. So old blood is one of the reagents that we used for our cure. And the use of old blood introduces +1 poison. Now, in the prior video, I talked about one of the prior videos. I talked about how poison and sweet, they negate each other. So if you have 1 point of poison, again, poison is sort of a misnomer. It's more of like foul taste, because sweet will counteract it. If you add an element of poison, it reduces the value of your potion by 4 silver. And sweet increases the value of your potion by 4 silver, right? So it's a 1-to-1, balances out. So we're going to counter the poison in the old blood with 1 dose of honey with that hive that we just purchased. So moving on to what's been written before that I want to highlight for this particular episode. So one thing is, with a couple of successful cures under my witch's belt, Mistress Sweetwater, and things, you know, there haven't been a lot of challenges. You know, it's just a couple of warts, one on the lips, one on the nose. So she's getting judgmental. Her head is really starting to get big and inflated, right? Her ego is high. How hard can this gig be? So she figures she's got it pretty easy. And so we're going to write in to show that at least at the beginning of the episode, she is feeling like the world's her oyster. It doesn't require a lot of effort. Look at this. And in fact, if I utilize resources that should be used in other ways, well, that's okay, because this is easy. This is an easy gig. I can do this. So that's one. Okay, so the other thing I want to make mention is that now that we're a few episodes in, the things that we've written before, so we've introduced characters, and we've introduced settings, and we've introduced all of these different things. And let's face it, some of these episodes have been really, really big, right? So we want to utilize some of that material and start to flesh it out, start to really develop it, right? And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to have Bob from Bits and Bobs be involved in this particular cure, because I don't want to have to introduce yet another character to have a cure for the cure. I want to bring somebody back that we already know and start to enrich that character a bit more, get to know them a little bit better, and really start to flesh the story out and add some depth so that it's more real, right? So we don't know everyone just on a surface level. We don't know the settings on just a surface level. We get to know everything a little bit deeper. So let's talk about the imagination part of all of this. So I talked about the fact that our witch is feeling a little bit, you know, things are good. I can do no wrong. Sweet gig. So she nearly runs out of time making this particular potion because because I've written in this mistake, and it took us so long to find the ingredient that we didn't need. So how does she react to that? How would she take it in the moment, and how would she take it going forward, that she nearly didn't cure somebody because she wasn't listening, because she got flustered, because she got scattered, because she wasn't paying attention, because she wasn't being careful? So we can think about that. Along with that thought, as we have our witch dealing with the things that she's encountering and whatnot, And over the course of this particular cure, at least, can we start to have little epiphanies? Can we have her see things in a different light? Can she maybe start to realize that things aren't quite so simple, and things aren't quite so perfect, and things aren't quite so neatly fit into things, that she needs to work at each time. She needs to be attentive, and she needs to be aware, and she needs to be gentle and kind, both to herself and to those around her. Okay, and so the last thing to mention here is I wrap up the story by hinting at what is coming up in the next episode. And I'll just leave that one open because it'll be at the end of the episode. Okay, so this is now the part of the video where I'm going to narrate the story. So taking all those bits, mixing them up into the creative mixing bowl, that is my head, and let's just see what it is that came out. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the experience of listening to the story as much as I had writing it. This is the life. When I think about how hard my father had to work, cutting down trees, processing them into transportable logs, and then getting them to the sawmill, so much time and effort for so little return, both in terms of money and respect. And yet here I am, comfortably set up in this lovely cottage, supported by people who, by the way things have gone so far, get warts on various parts of their bodies and pay handsomely to have them removed. I don't think my father, when he sent me off to school, would ever have expected me to find such an easy and lucrative place. And I didn't even have to attend that silly school. It just can't get much better than this. Although, now that I think on it, there's one thing that would improve the day. A small sampling of the honey I know is inside the beehive. Which is why I walked over to the hive, all busy and buzzing with activity, with a small spoon, ready to taste that golden sweetness. My mind wandered to the contents of the hive, then to how my mouth would delight in the thick and rich flavor, the product of so much effort, and all mine. The bees saw me coming, and I think were prepping up a droplet or 5, enough so I would know if it was sweet enough, rich enough, delicious enough. I couldn't wait. But I would have to wait because something happened. I think the wind shifted. But it wasn't the wind itself that put a delay on my delight, but rather the smell on the wind was enough to cause anyone to pause. It smelled like a midden, but a midden that had clogged due to some large thing that had died and was slowly blocking the flow, meanwhile rotting slowly away. Whatever it was bad. So bad, and not stopping. Mouse-eye emerged from somewhere close and ran up my pants leg, then up my shirt sleeve and up onto my shoulder. Before he spoke, I could feel the disapproval of my wasting a spot of honey for my personal gratification. I assume your nose is working. Whoosh! I nodded. Do you suppose the town will get that fixed soon? It's unbearable. I don't know. At first, I thought he was answering about the high Rannoch midden, maybe called low Rannoch, being fixed. But then when the wind shifted again, but the smell didn't, I wondered if he was thinking it wasn't coming from the town at all. Mouse-eye, can you check to see if this stink is coming from the town? A pause, then, must I? I was just about to say yes when I spied someone approaching the cottage. No, Mouse-eye, I think the source of the foul air has just arrived for help. I tucked my spoon into my pocket and headed back. As I got closer, I saw it was none other than Bob. What in the world had he done to have this happen? He saw me coming and, kind soul that he is, tested the wind to get himself downwind, yet still within shouting distance. He looked abashed. My apologies, mistress. I'm afraid I've been cursed. He was half gagging as he yelled that to me. I asked Mouse-Eye to spare Bob and I from shouting to each other, but of course Mouse-Eye was nowhere to be found. Typical. What happened? As Bob answered, I swear the air around him turned an unhealthy shade of green. Business deal went sour. A bog goblin swore he'd found something amazing and wanted me to buy it. Fen told Scarf. The thing about it is it goes bad really quickly. You need to harvest from living fen toads at your workbench. So what the goblin brought me was useless and not worth a thing. The goblin wasn't happy that I wouldn't buy, so he cursed me. Oh boy, did he ever. At least the diagnosis was easy. The potion was going to be a bit trickier than what I'd made before. The curse wasn't difficult to deal with, but the infection part was going to be a challenge. But no matter, I'd have Bob right as rain in no time, and I told him that. Gods, I hope so. I know the reek isn't good where you are, but from where I'm sitting, it's wretched, and I've got to keep my shop closed until I can wait on customers again. I gathered my things, bid him farewell. He insisted on staying in my cottage so as to not offend the townspeople with his breath. I wasn't happy that my cottage would probably forever smell of bog goblin, but I kept my mouth shut and headed off to Heroes Hollow. So, not that I'm complaining, but Heroes Hollow isn't my favorite place. For one, it's hollow. For two, I'm no hero. However, needs be that I go there, so needs be that I go there. At the very least, I now know where the walk-in entrance is. The falling-in entrance is also no, and very much not preferred. My goal, my focus, was on the infection. After all that I'd collected ahead of time, I hadn't gotten an infection reagent yet, and I figured while I was out, I'd pick up a fresh curse reagent as well. And so I was on the lookout for Silverleaf. The difficulty with Silverleaf is that it's sharp, clings to the sides of caverns and tunnel walls, and only grows in the dark. It's easy to cut yourself if you aren't careful. However, it is easier if you have a mouse who loves to watch things. He spotted it without much difficulty. And that's where things went from going well to absolute disaster. And in the end, it was my fault, but I was so absolutely certain I was right, I just wouldn't listen. I'd gotten it into my head that I needed liquid fire. It's not easy to find and dangerous if you're not prepared. Note the fire part of all that. But I was convinced it needed to be mixed into the potion. Mouse-Eye disagreed with me, and so we got into a bit of an argument. Yes, it's every bit as silly as it sounds. There I was, arguing with a mouse who claimed that not only was I in the wrong, but arrogantly so, with obvious references to my near wasting a dose of honey, in a dark tunnel not far from where I'd been accidentally temporarily imprisoned a couple of weeks prior. I said a couple of very not nice things, including his disappearing when things got tough. Not only not nice, they were unfair. I know that now. Heck, I knew it then too, but I was so full of myself. Frankly, I didn't recognize myself, looking back. Definitely not my finest moment. And then it got worse. Oh, so much worse. I said that maybe I should send him back to wherever familiars come from and get one that was truly useful. Mouse-Eye, stunned, just murmured, "I suppose you should," and then disappeared. No flash, no sound, just 1 second there, and the next, not, except for a single tear that glowed faintly blue in the dark and slowly faded away. I was a mess, but a mess who choked back her tears and focused once again on gathering liquid fire. Note to self, don't try to gather liquid fire when you're a mess. You'll just make a mess of it. I wandered around the tunnels, doing my best to find the blasted fire. Nope, nope, and nope. I think I actually screamed in frustration. Another note to self, when you scream in dark, creepy places, you may attract unwanted attention to yourself. I got lucky. It wasn't unwanted attention. It was more unhelpful at first. After I screamed, I stood stark still as it echoed along passages, dark and grim. Yes, I said dark and grim. I'm trying to be more poetic. I wasn't thinking dark and grim at the time. My thoughts were more like stupid, 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 especially when I heard footsteps, and they got closer and closer still. While it sounded like a small army coming at me, what I saw was a chest. A wooden chest moving towards me. When it got close enough, I could see what must have been 100 little legs underneath the body. It was weird. It was strange. It was what an enthusiastic dog would be if it were a piece of furniture. An enthusiastic dog that really wanted a treat. It begged. It whined. It stood up on more than 2 legs while all the rest waved ineffectually in the air. I had no idea what to do, and my super able translator had just buggered off. Drat. I patted my pockets to show that I had nothing to offer. No treats to be had here. See, I'm patting my pockets and finding something. What the? Why is there smooth croak in my pocket? Why is there? The walking box nuzzled my pocket. Yes, that one. He enjoyed the treat, I guess, and then it kind of crouched down, opened its lid, and let me peer in. I tried to look without getting too close, but it just wasn't possible to look effectively without sticking my head in. So I looked. Do you remember that I was feeling incredibly stupid? Yeah, looking back, this was another example. Yes, there was something in there. Yes, I was curious. Yes, I might have been swallowed, and that would have been it. It turns out there was something the chest wanted but couldn't make happen on its own. There were little knitted socks in the chest, about 100 of them. I know because I put booties onto each of the chest's feet. All of them. The end ones were okay, but the middle ones were harder, and most of the feet were in the middle. Once I was done, it padded off. And I was running out of time. I knew Bob wouldn't wait forever. As the chest padded off, I yelled out that I needed to find liquid fire. It stopped, managed to look over its shoulder, then, I guess beckoned is the best word, and off it led directly to liquid fire. I was excited, tired, morning mouse-eye, definitely not at my best. I managed to nearly hurt myself repeatedly. My clothes are going to need extensive mending, and my shoes are now more like open-toed sandals, but I finally managed to collect some. Finally. And as I mentally reviewed the benefits, I realized Mouse-Eye had been absolutely right. I didn't need this. Hadn't needed it. Had just wasted time and energy gathering this. I wanted to cry. So I did. The chest wandered off. I sat, absorbed in misery. I needed old blood, really needed it, and I had no idea how to wait. That cell I'd fallen into, wasn't there manacles on the wall? And where there's manacles, maybe there's struggle to escape. Maybe there was violence and spilled blood, and maybe there's harvestable blood. I set off at a run. Not so fast that I'd hurt myself if I banged into anything, but fast enough that I could feel air streaming past my face. I didn't make it to the cells. I didn't need to. On my way there, I passed by where I'd found the silverleaf. Had someone been extraordinarily unlucky with their harvest? Maybe sliced through an artery? It wasn't as if I was hoping someone would hurt themselves. I was hoping someone had hurt themselves. I found what I was looking for. Tucked away in a large crevice was the remains of someone, and there were blood scrapings aplenty. I raced home, hoping I was in time, that Bob hadn't left yet. He hadn't, but he wasn't happy at all that I'd taken as long as I had, I think. Actually, now that I'm going over what did happen, I think I was so embarrassed from the time I knew I'd wasted that I blew right by him, and frankly, the smell encouraged my speeding by, so that I didn't take the time to let him know that everything was going to be okay. And soon. As I was stoking the fire, I looked up to see Bob throw up his hands in frustration and start to leave. There was no way I was going to let him go after everything I'd been through, so I had to dash out and stop him. But first I had to catch my breath, and that wasn't easy since in catching my breath I caught big drafts of his. "Bob, sir, please, I've got everything I need to brew up the potion. I need just a bit more time to get things prepped and mixed. Please, don't go." I think I half wailed. He stood there for a minute, then, "I thought maybe things weren't going well. You weren't giving me the time of day. Anyway, I'll settle back into a chair and wait for your cure." While there were bunches of things I wanted to say, I only got out, "Thank you," before dashing back to the cottage. Okay, not quite true. I started to dash, but then Bob yelled out, "I'm not going anywhere, so just slow down and make the potion you know you can make. If you hurry, I could end up with no voice, or the face of a chicken. I could be stuck with bog goblin breath for the rest of my days." I did end up dashing into the cottage, but before I set to restarting my preparations again, I went to the little house, I guess, on the mantelpiece, closed my eyes, and just forced myself to breathe. And I counted them, all 10. Feeling much better from that pause, and better able to concentrate, I got back to my work. I got the fire stoked and began boiling the old blood. It reeked almost as bad as Bob's breath. While that was going, I crushed up the silver leaf. As I worked it into a powder, my mind drifted back to Hero's Hollow, the endless dark of the dungeon, and Mouse Eye. That I found Mouse Eye frustratingly obstinate, secretive, puzzling. How the silver leaf was approaching dust levels, crushed far more than I'd intended. Before the potion could be completed, I had one last ingredient to grab: honey, the bit of poison in the old blood would introduce. The spoon was still in my pocket. I pulled it out as I headed for the hive. The buzzing swelled as I approached. I hadn't figured out how to retrieve the honey, something else needing solving. Ugh. But this time I was going to do things properly. I stood in front of the hive and asked for a dose of honey, and held out the spoon in case they didn't understand me. Several bees began to fly circles around the base of the hive. I held my spoon under where they were flying. A small drizzle of honey dripped into my spoon. Holding it carefully, I thanked the bees, then headed back. The last step was combining all the ingredients together. A bit of mixing over low heat so that the honey would melt throughout, and it was done. I walked it out to Bob. He accepted it and drank it down. And in minutes, his breath was as fresh as honey can make it. And then, instead of reaching into his pocket or otherwise making haste back to High Rannoch, he just set the cup down, looked thoughtful for a minute, then began to speak. "You, little miss, and begging your pardon, I mean no offense, are young. You have a gift, no doubt, an ability to heal the body. But dealing with people is more than the physical. It's about compassion. When you came to my shop the first time, I served you and your desires to view my stock for a fair bit of time. I never once complained about what I knew was going to be my very cold lunch or my aching feet. It's something I learned when I sat with my grandfather as he ran the shop and when I clerked in the back for my father. It's something for you to learn now. It's more important in many ways to let people know what's going on, keep up their spirits, that sort of thing. Maybe you need a hobby that will help you be more peaceful. I know the old witch got into knitting baby booties. Really got into it. Bought way more yarn than ever she made into the town's babies. I know that. Maybe you should try your hand at something like that. I do see that you're far more calm now than you were when you first got back from your foraging hunt. Think on what I said. It's a manner that served my family for generations, and I hope will serve you well as well. And now I should pay you, get out of your hair, and get my shop aired out for opening tomorrow." The 20 silver clinked into my hand, but it felt like his words were worth far more. He waved as he stepped out of view. And I wandered back to the cottage, and to the spirit house on the mantelpiece, the house's house. It still wasn't much more than a small bowl of water, a candle, the star shard, and a few wildflower blossoms, but it represented more than what the parts were. Not a great explanation, but it's the best I can manage right now. It certainly wasn't perfect. It just wasn't perfect. And I certainly wasn't perfect. Oh no, not perfect at all, but I was doing the best I could. Not perfect, but doing my best. That's me. And this place, not perfect, but doing its best. And the bees, not perfect, but doing their best. And Mousei, not perfect, but doing his best. And I wasn't allowing him to be imperfect. His imperfect. Maybe it's frustrating to me that his imperfections are so frustratingly frustrating to me, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I behaved. I didn't treat Bob well, didn't treat myself well, and didn't treat Mousei well. I said it to myself, to the house's house, and to Mousei, wherever he was. And then I chuckled to myself. Wherever he is? I can probably guess. I looked up at the mantelpiece again. Water, candle, star shard, 2 eyes amongst a few wildflower blossoms. I reached over to where his little mouse head should be and gave it some gentle pets. You know, Mousei, I've spent my last 2 weeks wandering around, going to town, exploring here and there, but I haven't spent any time at all talking with you, sharing thoughts and ideas. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to stay here, walk the property a bit, but most of all, get to know you better. What do you think about that? With a mischievous grin, all he said was, "Must I?" And that is the story. Okay, so after reading that story, I'm ready for a little bit of breathing and a little bit of stretching. Want to join me? Here we go. Breathing in. And a stretch. Ooh, I heard a big pop. Okay. Okay, now this is the pantser section. And the discussion I wanted to have today concerns during a given writing session, because for Alicia and I, we will take multiple writing sessions over the course of multiple days to write our particular episode. So how do you keep track of where you are, what you've done, and also how do you deal with closing down a session when the story's not complete yet? Especially in cases where you're tired or you're fatigued. And in particular, people who are suffering from, say, chronic illness, where this is something that happens much more regularly. What are some ways that you can sort of mitigate your fatigue? So one idea, and I presented this last week, is to keep yourself on a weekly schedule. And so for Alicia and I, we draw our cards on a Monday, and then we have our times of the week that we normally will write. Okay, and that's one way to help. And we tend to write when we're more fresh. But even still, right, as you're writing, you may start to run out of gas. And the temptation, especially when you're tired, is to try and wrap things up really quick. And maybe end up you truncating the story that could go a little bit longer, have a little bit more detail, have a little bit more richness to it, have a little bit more depth. As you feel yourself starting to get tired, and you may not recognize that you're getting tired, you may just start to feel like you're petering out a little bit, and thoughts are a little slower, and you're looking to just finish things up. That is a sign that you're running out of gas. It is not necessarily a sign, however, that the story is ready to close, right? So that's two different things, right? The writing session versus the story. So with the writing session, when you start to feel a little fatigued, when you start to feel a little bit drained, close up the book. Close the computer. No, make sure you save. The book you don't have to, right? The ink is just right. It's automatic, but you do need to save on the computer. Um, but before you do that, maybe make a couple of notes about where you think things are going to go in the next writing session. And I've done this a couple of times, and I'll actually pen notes in my book, right? Because I'm writing longhand with my fountain pen in my journal, and I'll just be like, remember to add the Sphinx, remember to add this particular thing, remember to, and then like, oh, okay, right. When I come back the next time, there's the notes, and I've reread the last little bit, and so I've got the flavor of things, and then off I go, and everything's fine. So that's one way to sort of get around things, right? These notes. Another way, if you forget the notes, you can always go back and reread what you've written and try and recapture that spark of where things were going. And maybe, if the spark is there, great. And you can, continue on your merry way. So if the spark isn't there, just like how I wrote in my confusion and my disappointment in searching for something that we didn't need and spent a lot of time and effort on, and I was upset, quite upset about it. So I wrote it into the story so that Mr. Sweetwater got to experience it as well. Put that in, maybe write it in, like you've collected a reagent, right? And that's where you cut for that particular day, and you go to open it the next day, and you're like, oh God, what was I doing? Something happens, right? It's just like I collected my reagent, and I have no idea what to do next. I simply can't remember. And brain fog is right in the brain fog, right in this legitimate thing of trying to remember what it is that you're doing, and bring back the little bits and pieces that you wrote before. Like, I remember that I was doing this, and I remember that I was doing that, and okay, I don't remember exactly what I was supposed to do, but I'm going to do this. Right? That's perfectly legit. And it makes your character more relatable. It makes your character more human, because nobody's perfect. And if you can write that in, I mean, it is hard to write legitimate like forgetfulness or any type of thing where it's just like something goes wrong. I find it difficult. Maybe other people find it easy. I find it difficult. So to actually experience it and then write down what it is you're experiencing, wow, you're in the moment. You're right there. You're not thinking about the character. You're just thinking about you, right? Like, where am I? Like, oh, I don't remember. And that's okay, because that will help you to come up with a direction. So something to keep in mind is that if you close your story early, if you truncate it, if you close it before you're really ready to close it, you probably won't be as happy with it as you would be if you were just to close your book. And even if you only have a few paragraphs left to go, or so you think, close the book. Those paragraphs, they can be written tomorrow. They can be written in the next writing session. They don't need to go down today, right? No stress, no hurry, no fuss, no rules, right? These are all guidelines. There is no rule that says, and there is no guideline that says that everything needs to be written today. Doesn't exist. Does not exist. You can push it for however long you'd like until you are in a comfortable place where you're fresh and ready to go, and you can pick things up again. And you'd be surprised at what you will put down on the page when you are fresh, and how far you can go, how much deeper you can go, how much more enriching the experience is going to be for you. So in the next episode, as I said, I wrapped up this episode with total hint as to what's going to happen next episode, where it's just going to be Mouse Eye and Mr. Streetwater that have a little bit of a conversation. You're going to figure out some stuff, and it gets pretty interesting. Where does Mouse Eye go? How do things work? I'm really happy with how that episode turned out, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and thank you for joining me on this episode. I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Okay, bye for now.